All right. Welcome to Screen Guardians podcast. I'm your host, Katie, and joining me today, I have Kat Kaplan. She is a school counselor here locally and works primarily with kids. She sees kids in school that are elementary all the way up to middle school, but her primary focus is fifth through eighth grade. So, Kat is somebody who I would love for her to do a proper introduction of herself, but she is on the front line and working with these kids day in and day out. So I thought she was a perfect person to bring on today. In light of our last conversation about child pornography, having difficult conversations with kids. So I'm really thankful to have Kat on here today. Kat, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So, if you don't mind, kind of, would you give us a brief introduction of yourself, your expertise, your education, your background, and how you got to be in the position that you are in schools?
Yeah, so I started out as a teacher, teaching seventh grade in Oklahoma. And then my family moved to Kansas City, where I decided to get my master's in counseling psychology. Um, and yeah, part of the reason for that was just I have a talent with connecting with kids, and I wanted to be able to do that in a school setting, but in a more formal way. So I got my master's, and then had a lot of different clinical experiences. So I feel like landing in a school, I was kind of always meant to end up in a school. Like it's a family thing too. My mom's always, worked in a school. But I've had experience in private practice, in school based settings, like rural settings, and low SES settings.
Mhm.
And then most recently, before I landed at the school I'm at now, I was doing inpatient psychiatric care with specifically in an adolescent unit, but I also saw adults as well.
Wow, wow, that's intense. So, well, we're so glad you're here. Your knowledge in this subject matter is really significant, especially in light of this whole concept of this podcast is screen guardian. So, and a lot of complications, mental health issues are affecting kids from overuse of technology and devices. So that's something that I'm sure we're going to speak to here in a moment. But you're somebody that I consider on the front line. So you see kids day in and day out. You see the dynamics of between kids and some of the dynamics with technology. What are some of the biggest issues or stresses that you're seeing on children today? And again, primarily you're seeing fifth through eighth grade, but I know you have a pulse on kids that are younger than that as well.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, the biggest one would be anxiety, just the anxiety that it causes. Um, Seeing things that either are not age appropriate that can cause anxiety and guilt, seeing things that you want constantly, right, with ads and things like that, and feeling anxious about not having those things, anxiety over comparison. Um, I mean, the list goes on and on. I think that anxiety would be, the big part. And then also when it gets to the point where, if kids feel like they're not able to achieve or get these things, their self-image gets um, affected as well. So I would say what I see the most are, kids really questioning the am I good enough thing, having anxiety over things like that, body image issues. I mean, you know, the web, the internet screens like it's limitless, and then I say like that means the problems are limitless, and the effects, on kids are pretty limitless. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's so you mentioned the not being good enough, right? Like in a time in that preteen and adolescent years where your your identity and sense of self is starting to develop, right? And you
Hmm.
start to look externally for ways to validate and understand who you are and your role in this world, right? And so social media, the internet is so vast and your exposure to so many
Yeah.
things is kind of daunting, right? So So is it primarily with social media that you're seeing these issues or the anxiety increase in kids, or is it not just social media?
I see it in both social media and things like Netflix shows. Um, I hear a lot of students reference like television shows or, reality TV and things like that. And that's the part where, you're kind of like, well, that's not real life. But it really is hard at that age to differentiate and to look at things with, kind of a keen eye. Like as adults, we can say, oh, well, that's a situation that would never happen. But you have these portrayals of, they're essentially adults, these celebrities that are playing, high schoolers or older teens playing middle schoolers on, certain shows that, you know, and they're in very not, you know, I would say accurate, like, like scenarios and things like that of what a typical, high school or middle schooler would be in. So for sure, it's not just the social media.
Mm-hmm. What would you say, what does anxiety look like? So you said anxiety is the number one problem that you're seeing, or the most common thing you're seeing in kids. How would you explain that anxiety? Because I'm not sure a lot of kids know how to define anxiety or say I have anxiety or I'm anxious, right? So what does that look like? How does it show up?
So for younger kids, a lot of times it's going to show up as physical symptoms. So a lot of times, if a kid is having constant stomach aches around the same time each day or headaches, that's like, if it's consistent, that's the number one thing with no underlying health issues, obviously. But that is a huge indicator of anxiety. And a lot of times we see it in the morning um, or certain times of day, like if a kid always needs to go to the nurse around like math time. So certain subjects can bring it out. So you definitely have those symptoms. And then as kids get older, I would say boys tend to stick with a lot of those physical symptoms and not necessarily know it's anxiety. So I would say adolescent boys, you get the stomach aches. You also will get like a lot of sweating or having shaky hands or things like that, kind of unsteady breath, um, kind of those externalizing physical symptoms, where females, as they get older, tend to have the internalizing, you know, symptoms of anxiety, which would be like, the racing thoughts, the constant, questioning and self doubt, right? Like, you know, kind of that little voice that's always asking, like, oh my gosh, are all these people watching me? Did this person notice this? Was I in the bathroom for too long? Like, those are the kinds of questions and things that I hear my students talk about. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And then when they come to you, are you that place they go to to kind of vent for support, or it's like a break in their day, it's an escape from whatever the anxious thought or place is?
Yeah, I like to ask them what they want from me. Um,
Good.
that's always, to me, the best way to get, the best results is to ask exactly. So I'll ask them, I'll be like, so with what you're bringing me today, are you wanting to just vent? Are you wanting some time and we can, get your mind off the subject, talk about something else? Or are you wanting something actionable? Like if something's making a kid anxious, like a subject or something, I love to, offer myself to model how a conversation might go, with a teacher or with a parent and things like that. So, um, any of those things really. I like to ask what they're looking for because kids are different. They don't all want things to be fixed for them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. And what often do you hear from them when you ask them that question?
I would say a lot of times it's to listen. I would say it's about 30% like, Miss Kaplan, I need I need help. I need like, you know, I need you to help me through this actual thing.
Yeah.
But then a lot of times it's just listening, or with anxiety, a big part sometimes is getting through the moment. So, what can we chat about? Or can we put this little 100-piece puzzle together in like 10 minutes and get your mind off of it. Um, so yeah, a big part of, the job is really just listening and being present.
Hmm. Creating that space for the kids, like a safe space for them. So,
Yeah.
what does what are some of the tools you give them when they are dealing with that anxiety? And maybe for some of the parents or listeners that we have, say I'm noticing anxiety in my child, like what would you recommend they do to help manage the anxiety or help their kid learn how to manage it, even if the kid maybe hasn't identified it as anxiety, but maybe the parent is.
Yeah. So the first thing that I always take a look at is like I like to look at kids like in a holistic way. So like um are the basic things, being met? And for adolescents and teenagers, one of those is sleep, right? So that's one of the first questions that I ask is what's going on with sleep? Are you sleeping too much? Are you sleeping too little? Because a lot of times that can kind of point in a direction. And two, a lot of times that's when I do find out, oh, like there is a device in the room, there is a screen.
Yeah. How often
So,
do you think sleep interrupted? Like what percentage of kids do you see whose sleep is interrupted? Is it due to a device?
oh my gosh. Just it's not scientific, but a lot.
A lot,
um,
majority.
hmm yeah, yeah. If not, and some kids turn in they'll turn in their phone, but they'll still have like an iPad or a television in their room and something like that. And for teenagers, especially adolescents, starting around the age, and we don't really know why, but 11, 12, 13, their melatonin. So that's a natural sleepy chemical that we all produce, right? Um, we tend to, as functioning adults and small children, it naturally starts to increase as the sun goes down. We don't know why, but for adolescents, that time gets pushed back like 2 to 3 hours. So, you know, you're looking at a kid that was once tired, let's say in the summer, like starting to get tired around 8 or 9, then that gets pushed to like 11, 12 midnight. And we know that melatonin is also light reactive. So not only is their body naturally not producing it, but if they're also on their phone, that's why a lot of times I would say one of my most common things that I hear um, my middle schoolers say is, I just can't go to sleep. Like I try to go to sleep at a good time, but I just can't. And some of that's not their fault, right? Some of that's scientific, but the screens do not help at all. So
Yeah, and then so what else are you assessing? Like if somebody says they believe they have anxiety, so you're assessing like their sleep, like how much sleep are they getting? What else do you look at?
are they eating? So do you eat breakfast? Um, the answer for a lot of kids is no. So I think, making sure that they're eating regularly is important, drinking water. But then another big one too, I ask them like who their people are. And this is really when I start to get, I would say if sleep isn't affected, if a kid's not feeling good at school and they come to me, it's typically something social or something with like a teacher. So that's why I love the question. Well, like, who are your people? Like, who are your people in this school? And when they kind of start to hesitate or they're like, well, I was, best friends with so and so, because also this time there's a lot of shakeups with friend groups.
So if there's their people have shifted or they're not connecting with who their people are or once were potentially, that's
Yeah.
contributing to anxiety.
And that's huge. That's their lifeline, right?
Right.
Like for, adolescents especially, they really do naturally start to take that like separation from their family into their own person. And then the next thing that they connect onto is friends. So friends are like so incredibly important during this time. Um, and you really do see when there start to be like the friendship rifts or things like that. That's when I would say, especially when parents contact me, it's like that is a big difference that you see in your kid,
Yeah.
um, for
Yeah.
sure.
I mean, personally, when my daughter will get in the car and she's in a mood, so she's sixth
Hmm.
grade, she's in a mood. so I know something happened, right? I know something happened at school, whether it's usually social, like grades and stuff like that. Like she'll get upset, but not the same way she does with her friends. And I know her relationship with her friends are more significant and becoming more significant to her than they were when she was younger, right? So in my role, in my significance, my voice becomes less prominent for her, which is why I think having communication with somebody in your position, the school counselor who sees all the things, and hopefully, my daughter is continuing to tell me things when she needs to, but I know small things, may not be shared, or it might take a minute for her to share them with me. So again, you having a pulse as to what's happening in school is significant for parents to be in my mind, in communication with someone like you if they're experiencing or noticing things going on with their kiddo. Um,
Yeah.
do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. And I would also say just, adolescents start to get really, really savvy at reading rooms, right? And reading situations. And I would say with kids, I would say one of the reasons why they might favor talking to someone like me over a parent, right, would be fear of judgment. So, and I know I'm guilty of this too. Like, moms don't forget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't forget. We don't forget the first kid to hurt our kids' feelings. Like, you know, and I find that a lot of times adolescents are really protective of what they do want to share because, especially with moms, because they don't want their mom to not like somebody or to judge somebody the same way that they don't want to be judged. Um, so that's a really common, I think, barrier to communication too, is kids being like, well, I'm afraid of what my parents are going to think, or I'd still like to be friends with this person after that, but I don't know if my mom will let me have them over. So things like that, I would say are really big too.
Yeah. They're protecting that friend or that friendship.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that makes sense. So let's go back to, you said anxiety is one of the most important, significant things you're seeing. And you said early on that kids are not only anxious about the, things on TV, online, being something, a life that they don't have, right? So that's the questioning their identity a little bit, or I don't have all those things. Am I good enough? But what about things you mentioned that they're not supposed to see? Can you share more about that?
Yeah. So I think a really good example of this would be YouTube. YouTube is, great for a lot of things, and it can also be a huge anxiety trigger. Um, I remember with my own son, we got him for Christmas, and we have our own rules around like screens, but I allow screens in my house
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for my kids to have.
Yeah.
It, I think it doubles the work. I think it makes the
Yeah.
hardest parts of parenting a lot harder. But, at the end of the day, so um, he was watching YouTube, and it was right after a significant like news event. And this was just like a CNN like pop up or something that came up. It wasn't something that I would ever like have on my TV. Like, we're not a news family. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think many families are anymore,
Yeah.
where it's just playing idly in the background, like it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But,
Same.
um, that a current event about a shooting popped up and really scared him. And that was for me as a mom when I was like, oh my gosh, like this was just a pop up.
Yeah. Right.
Just, wow. And it frightened him. And then it was a conversation. Um, so I would say, YouTube, things like that. Um, and then also Snapchat for the older kids now has like a feature that's essentially like Instagram Reels or
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
TikTok, right? Um, and it's local, it's essentially just people in the area. So, not necessarily people that you've added as friends, or, it's like a public, like, reel of things that they can just go through that's now on the app. That I had another parent show me the kinds of things that pop up on hers. Um, and I was pretty appalled. Like, it's kind of shocking.
Hmm. So you're saying they're like short form videos, like content, and it's
Hmm.
ads or just somebody like influencer or somebody's content that's popping up and basically unfiltered content.
Yeah, you haven't, I like to think that one of the parts of Snapchat that, at least I don't have it, but that my students have talked about that they, use to get their parents on board is they accept the followers or they have to seek out or something. I think it's like, I don't know how it works, but you do have to basically give consent for each person to talk to you. But this new feature is just completely the opposite. So without
Mm,
your consent, you're kind of just getting bombarded with, I guess, what's trending.
got it.
Um, yeah.
Exposure to content you don't really that that maybe you're targeted to want
Hmm.
to they want you to see it, right? So
Hmm.
based on the algorithm and all that stuff. So which can be scary, right? It's content that could be promoting body image, promoting other things. So yeah, I understand that. So when that happens, what does that conversation look like when you know that's the cause of the child's anxiety?
So are you asking if a kid has seen something that, kind of frightened them or is bothering them?
Yeah. So our last episode, we talked about pornography, and the exposure to pornography is occurring at rapid rates at very early ages, and oftentimes unintentional. Some are
Hmm.
intentionally seeking out pornography, but the average age is 10 right now. Majority of kids are seeing it at the age of 10. And now they're saying it's not if your child will be exposed to pornography, it's just a matter of when. And so having conversations proactively about when you see something that maybe you're not supposed to see, that wasn't you weren't intending to see or seek out, how do you respond to that? So how would you convey or communicate what would that conversation look like for you if you were communicating with a child? And then maybe we can talk about how to prepare parents or caregivers for how
Hmm.
to engage in that conversation, because I think it's hard. I've had a lot of parents say, I don't know how to have these conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think first off, just taking, having like a pre-statement of like, you know, well, I kind of want to go back. I kind of want to start out with like,
Sure.
I guess ideally, the conversation that I really like to have happened ahead of time, or
Sure.
I encourage parents to have, which is not when, but if you
Hmm.
see something on your tablet or you see something on YouTube or on an app that's inappropriate, like when that happens, I want you to know you can come to me. Like, first and foremost, I don't, because I think a lot of times we play it like, if this happens, and that makes a lot of kids afraid to like talk about it and come forward because they feel like it's like a consequence.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really, to me, important part of parenting in this age of, technology right now is an awareness that we have to have, that we have to be okay with saying either something's going to pop up or you're just going to mess up, right?
Hmm.
And it's not
Right.
if, it's when.
Right.
And having that open door of just come and talk to me first. Um, that takes a lot of the shame out of it, especially when it's a when this happens kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, because I find that the shame is probably the biggest part that
Yeah.
keeps kids from wanting to talk.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's very true. I think shame is so big and so important to realize that it keeps people stuck and keeps they want to keep it a secret or in the dark because it feels too bad, right? So in
Yeah.
our house, we have a rule where if you've done something wrong, like you snuck something out of the candy, whatever, like
Hmm.
like did something like Nora took the iPad in her room because she was searching on Amazon for something, like, right? Like if
Hmm.
she did
Yeah.
that and I catch her, it's much different consequence than if she were just to tell me, hey, mom, like, I was so proud of my youngest, like, not that I mean, they've definitely snuck stuff and I've caught them like candy and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
my youngest came when I was in the shower one time. He came in my bathroom when I got out of the shower and said, Mom, he had a bite of candy. And he was like, I snuck this and I couldn't finish it because I felt too bad. And I was like, you're a
Oh,
little
yeah.
angel. I was so proud of him. And
Yeah.
I like uh, talked to the older kids about it, like how proud I was of him. And I didn't
Hmm.
get mad. So there's no punishment if you talk to us and talk and I make sure I always tell our kids, like, you can always tell me, I'm not going to be mad at you. Like, you can always come to me whenever you need to or whenever. But I think you have to proactively have those conversations, right?
Yes.
We bought
Yeah.
the books Good Pictures, Bad Pictures, and they have
Okay.
the books for 2 to 6 year olds, or maybe it's like 4 to 6. I can't remember, but there's a younger age one and then an older age one, and it's basically a book you read with your kid to kind of prepare them for potentially exposure to pornography. And it's just like sometimes there's pictures or video or stuff out there that might make you feel icky, and you might actually be curious about it and want to see more of it. But basically, like, it's unsafe, and it talks about that. So it starts that the dialogue, but it's hard. Like, we didn't grow up
Yeah.
talking about this. Like, this is a whole
Yeah.
world and like kind of exposure that we never really talked about before. But I feel like now as parents, we have to proactively prepare for these conversations.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was getting at is I think that it takes a lot of pre-work,
You're right.
um, which is why I said you know, introducing screens and introducing technology does make the hard parts of parenting even harder. And it can almost, expedite a lot of conversations that, if you weren't ready to have, once you introduce a screen, you need to be ready to have them.
Yeah.
So it's so huge. And I think that's the big piece that, I like to get across is I feel like it's a lot of like, not just for the kids to know, but for adults to know, right? Like I'm consenting, I'm bringing this can of worms into my life, um, and
Yeah.
be prepared to talk about the stuff that's awkward,
Yeah. Yeah.
porn being one of them.
Yeah. It's
So,
Pandora's box, that's for sure.
mhm.
So what would you suggest, or how would you prepare parents to engage in conversations? I know be proactive, but say I find out my kid has had exposure to porn and we haven't had a conversation about it. Like, what would that first conversation with them look like? Like, what would you recommend that conversation look like?
I would start out, you know, the setup for these conversations is kind of everything.
Yeah.
Um, what's the mood and what's the tone? Productive conversations don't happen when people are upset. They just don't. So finding the right time to talk about it,
Hmm.
when you're not distracted and when your kid is not distracted,
Hmm. So maybe
and kind
mom
of
and dad need to step away from feeling very heated and emotional and wait until they're able to be more grounded.
for sure, especially with adolescents, like they can read a room so well and they can tell if the guard is up, and you know whether they have something like to hide or not. you know our defenses go up when somebody starts accusing us of things,
Hmm.
no matter what. So I think the setup is big. If you're angry about something, take a step away. Like you have to be in kind of a rational thought there. Um, and same for the child. And I think it's all about prefacing with, I'm just curious, right? Like this isn't, you know, so I'm taking away the iPad because, or, you won't have your phone anymore because, um, that's a really easy way to shut down the conversation, because again, especially with adolescents, like that's their lifeline. So don't preface the conversation with, I'm taking XYZ away. um, just approach it with curiosity. So, for example, okay, so I want to talk to you about something that I was alerted to, that you saw this on your phone and you've accessed it a couple times. Can you tell me about that? And see what they say, right? if they're, you know, and it really depends on the stage of development too, right? Like, because this could either go, you know, this is really unsafe and, we need to talk about how to, you know, not have this happen again. Or maybe it's an age appropriate conversation of, at your age, it's normal to have these kinds of questions and to want to look for these kinds of images. But this is not, pornography is an unsafe way to go about that
Hmm.
for you and your future partners, right? So it really depends on the age with how you want to put it. But the open ended, I would say I say that more than anything when I'm with kids is just tell me about that.
Right. Yeah. Go in curious, asking questions. I think
Hmm.
that's really good advice. And the reality is, I mean, I'm not sure if, like, if in this scenario, if the parent would be aware or know what the child saw, or just that it's like inappropriate content. But I mean, the reality is, pornography now is not consensual sex.
Right.
Pornography now is very violent, very, very violent.
Hmm.
And it's very dangerous because if that shapes the way a child perceives sexual acts, like that's very harmful, right, to them
Hmm.
and their perception of what it actually is. So at some point, do you talk about that, right? Do you identify that this is not what sex is intended to be? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you add that
Yeah.
context to it and why it's unsafe potentially for them to see it?
Yeah. When I was going through my master's program, I got to work really closely with one of the individuals that, was working there with me, and she ran Title IX at the school.
Mhm.
And she always gave a really good talk on pornography to the freshman boys. And I think her talks were really, you know, I think kids went to them and they were like, you know, just kind of groundbreaking in the sense that she really did talk about it for not only your best interest for like your development, but also like your partner's one day. Like, that's not how you want to love somebody one day. And I think, especially, just talking about it in that way, out of like your health, your sexual well being, not just for you, but for other people, is, a different way to look at it. And I think, positive, especially for that older male population as well.
Mhm.
That this is not what, you know, this is not what women want, and this is not real.
Mhm. And how much of helping a child, preteen, teenage age kid, maybe even younger, understand the science behind it? Meaning, like, this is exciting in your brain, right? Like the dopamine, like
Hmm.
basically essentially explaining, like, this is producing the feel good chemicals in your brain, right? And like helping them understand why they seek it out or why they would be curious about it, or why their brain, might be activated by it the same way your brain is activated by, like social media, right? Like, and all the things.
Hmm.
So I mean, does
Yeah.
that help them justify and explain all the reasons as to potentially why it's not good for them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, also, it really does activate those parts of the brain similar to alcohol
Hmm.
or things like that. And I think that, the same way that, especially now, there's this movement about being really savvy alcohol consumers, right? With finally the FDA's recognizing, you know, hey, this is a known carcinogen.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Looking at porn the way that we look at that, like, you know, being aware of the risks and why it is addicting, right? And two, you do look at it and it is an addiction now. That's one of the fastest growing fields of therapy and psychology is, dealing with porn addiction and treating porn addiction. Um, and I think too, that's a great way to, you know, kind of pose it when we're talking to kids too, of this can turn into, you know, a real addiction.
Hmm. Yeah, in our house, addiction runs in my family, and we actually have conversations very early on about like, we, it's what addiction is, like how it's something that you can't stop doing or your body struggles to stop doing it, and how we have to be careful with our decisions and the choices that we make because there is a predisposition to have an addiction to XYZ or whatever, alcohol or whatever. So we have those conversations already, and I hadn't thought about applying it in this way to things that induce dopamine, like social media, like pornography, all the things. So I do think that's an interesting perspective, and I think it could be beneficial to take the emotion out of it, which I think is nice.
Hmm.
It takes that emotion and shame out of it and makes it more objective. Um,
Hmm.
to me,
Yeah,
that
for
helps.
sure. Yeah, it does. And I think too, just when you do look at it that way, and you can use that exact same science, which, is always helpful. And then too, I think, just where, you know, I come from in the population, that I serve right now, and with my kids too, it's really important to also talk about the ethics of these kinds of things. Um, you know, right and wrong, and especially consent. The consent piece is huge,
Yeah.
right? Um, and consent continues to be something that, you know, I feel like I harp on it a lot in my house because it's important to me that my kids understand what it is and all types of things. But um, especially when it comes to seeing images on the internet and the way that porn is produced these days, I think it's really important to get that across to adolescents,
Hmm.
and young adults too. That don't know maybe how the industry works.
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. What, so being in the position that you're in, what would be the number one advice you would give to parents raising children in this, this day and age?
Woof. It would be um,
Like if you could wave your magic wand and you wish every parent knew this or could take
I
away
think
this nugget of knowledge, what would it be?
I think to be aware that when you introduce phones and smart devices, it makes the hard parts of parenting harder.
Mm,
Is something that I wish that I had also, like, just myself, not even thinking. And with younger kids, even you look at ads for toys
yeah.
that, will pop up, even on like YouTube Kids, or like, streaming services now have all these ads built in, unless you get like premium and stuff. And it's like,
Hmm.
you know, the wanting, that's a huge thing for small kids that,
Yeah.
I deal with, you
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
it,
Okay.
it,
So just to reiterate what you said, you wish every parent knew how adding a device increases the complexity or increases the demands of being a parent,
yes,
whether it's a
absolutely.
phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's, yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Our job as a parent becomes more complicated when you introduce a device.
Yes,
Yeah, I
for
agree.
sure. I
Which
mean, yeah.
when I was young, like my kids were young, it was like the iPad was just becoming a thing, and it was kind of
Uh-huh.
used as a babysitting tool, right? And
Hmm.
I think people believed you could have the best of both worlds. Like you could work
Yeah.
and you'd have something keeping your kids entertained.
Yeah.
They were getting
Yeah.
stimulated by something, engaging in something while you could be productive, which was a lie,
Yeah.
right? It's a lie.
Right, right, right. Stimulated at a cost,
At a cost.
right?
At a cost.
Stimulated at a huge cost of not being okay with boredom,
Yeah.
right? At, not knowing what it's like to really wait for something.
Yeah.
Um, and we see that, attention
Yeah.
problem, you know, that's, I would say too, that's another obvious one of the screens, but it all comes at a cost,
At a cost. Yeah.
um,
So
for
if
sure.
do you think delaying screens, delaying smartphones, all that, do you think that improves the quality of a child's life or prolongs childhood for that individual potentially?
Absolutely. I don't, there's really not any doubt in my mind
Yeah.
that it does. And I even just look at, you know, when it comes to things like playing outside, or like if I know at least like with my son, if I'm like, I want you to like go outside and you can go play with the neighbors or, um, oops, are you still there?
Yeah. You're good.
I, my phone rang. Okay, sorry.
You're good.
But if
You're
I'm
still here.
like, go, play outside or whatever, even if he doesn't have like an agenda, he'll come up with something with the neighbors to do and they're out there,
Yeah.
for out and that to me is so important.
I agree.
Like the playing, the imagination. Um, it kills me to think that some of that gets lost.
Yeah. Yeah. So, would you say anxiety you believe has increased because of technology, introduction of technology?
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And also, I think, looking at it from, the adolescent girl side. And I know this is something that, you and I have spoken about, like growing up, if we were left out of something, right? We would find out about it maybe Monday morning, maybe while kids were talking, but it wasn't actively happening. You can divert your attention. It's not, it is what it is. You're like, oh, that stinks, whatever. Whereas now, you know, girls can actively and boys can actively see what they're being left out of in real time
Yeah.
and what they're doing and where they're going and everybody who's included that is not you,
Yeah.
which I think is such a unique, I know for me and my insecurities growing up, I mean, I would have been devastated.
Yeah. Me too.
So, I know for me and my daughter's like me, we're both really kind of sensitive, empathic people that, we're just very similar. And I know that that's something that I want to protect her from for sure.
Hmm.
Um, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. 100%. I agree. Um, I think, I'm an empath like you are and sensitive, and knowing in real time that my friends were somewhere, everybody was there but me, or what felt like everybody but me, would have been crushing, right? Like to my
yeah,
self esteem, to my sense of self worth. Like it would have been hard. So I have so much empathy for kids right now, and I want to protect and shelter them as long as I can from exposure to unnecessary things. And I see that as unnecessary. There's no reason for us to know. We weren't made to know all the things happening at all times at that, in that instance, right? That's why media is the news. We don't listen to the news because it's too much. It's too much
right,
information. Um,
right. And what's the purpose of it too, is what I, find myself asking, like when kids are making memories now, like explain that outing to me or that get together when all you did was post what you did.
yeah. Yep.
You know what I mean? What,
Yes.
like, is the significance also being taken out of certain moments now
Yeah.
because they're being had to post?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
all
Distraction.
interesting, things to think about. Like,
Hmm.
that like I'm kind of passionate about protecting, um, you know, doing things because you want to do them
Hmm.
with people you want to do them with, not, to get a
Hmm.
reaction.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's hard, like growing up with this. I mean, we're the first parents to raise kids in this digital age, and we're learning as we go. And obviously, studies are just now being concluded, and results are kind of just being sort of shared with the consequences of this digitally connected all the time, and the comparison and the social emotional development being negatively impacted by screens and comparison all the time, right? And so,
Hmm.
and now pornography. And so, As parents, it's an uphill battle, but part of why we're doing this is so we can educate and inform parents, assure them they're not alone, and guests like you who share what's happening inside the schools, what you're seeing with kids, and how parents can take that knowledge and apply that to things they're doing at home in order to improve the relationship with their kids, in order to best be prepared for incidences that can unexpectedly happen, right? Because unexpected things are going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what is there anything else that you want to touch on, Kat, as we kind of wrap up today?
I thought of this as you were saying, what you're seeing most in schools. Something I would say a really common conversation that I have. And I would say this is mostly with like adolescent girls is, and I don't really have like, you know, a way to combat it. It's just an interesting observation that I
Sure.
thought I would share.
Yeah.
Is the girls, the adolescents, and they, have their play dates as they normally would, but how those play dates change when a friend gets a phone.
Yeah.
It's it's crazy to sit and listen to, you know, the girl that doesn't have the phone. She's like, my friend is just boring. Like all my friend wants to do is, or we're talking and they're like, hold on, or scrolling. And I think that's something to, to be aware of as parents too. Like, what kind of connections to giving a phone allows a kid to have connections, right? But then it also comes with the risk of changing their other connections.
Hmm.
And I would say that's a big one that, I thought of because I had a couple kids last week talk about that, what it's like when the friend gets a phone, how that changes the friendship. Um,
And,
it's
and I
interesting.
think indirectly, I'm hearing you say, I kind of miss my friend. I miss that
Yeah,
connection.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
sad. I think Screen Sanity has a term for that. They call it, I think, fubbing. Instead of snubbing,
Oh
it's
yeah.
fubbing. Like
Oh
you're
yeah.
on your phone and you're like, so
Yeah. That makes
and
sense.
as parents, we do that too, right? Like I'm putting our Instacart order in and Nora's trying to talk to me and I'm like, and I find myself narrating like, hey, let me send this email. I can't talk to you while I'm writing the copy for this email. 1 second. Just
Yeah.
give me 2 minutes. Like, like so they know I'm not just mindlessly scrolling, but
Yeah.
it's hard, because again, we have access to these all day
Yeah.
at all times and we can be technically on call or available at all times. So we have to set boundaries. But I, it's hard. It's interesting you say that about friends and the dynamics of friendships can change when one gets a phone and the other one doesn't have it. It's actually become one of the first things I ask when my kids go to a house for a play date. What do they have a gaming station? What do they do? Like I ask my
Hmm.
kids, like do they have a phone? Are they allowed to have? Do they have social media? Like what does that look like? And it becomes a conversation prior to going to that house as to what our rules are for our house and what we allow and what I would prefer them to do to spend their time together. Like if you're going to go to their house, let's not sit inside and play video games all day. Okay, let's go play. Why don't you go? It's nice out. Go play basketball. Of course, it's not
Hmm.
February when we had this conversation,
Yeah.
but I have found those are the conversations that I'm having prior to play dates in order to set up the intentions for their time together, which maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to have a conversation with the parents too, but I think we have to have those
Hmm.
conversations and be more open parents dialogue too about this because I think it's important.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think it's huge, and it does affect their friendships.
Hmm.
It really does. Like it's kind of shocking, and also just kind of sad to hear, um, when a kid feels like, oh wow, like I'm not, it's not exciting to go to my house anymore.
Aw,
You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah,
not, there's something more exciting on the phone. And
yeah,
but once again, it's all give and take. I see why it would be important for a teenager to bring a phone when they go somewhere.
Yes.
But I think kind of the recurring theme in this is just that it's all at a cost,
At a
right?
cost. Yeah. You
All
have
of
to
this
choose.
is, you do.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think it'd be important for parents to set precedents for like when Nora had her birthday party, I pretty much just said like if they bring a phone, I'm going to go ahead and collect them. So we're basically they're not on like TikTok because Nora had gone to a party where the girls were on some girls were on social media and some were playing. And so it's like when Nora had her party, I was just like, if there are phones, I'm going to go ahead and take them. They can have them at the end. If you need me, parents, contact me directly. But
yeah,
I'm just going to eliminate it being an issue. So I think we parents we have to start thinking about this a little bit if
yeah.
they're going to come to your house, and maybe we have some rules or precedents around it, which is kind of a tough
And
conversation, but I think it's necessary.
I mean, it's a tough conversation, but at the same time, like when it comes to, the kinds of things that kids can produce and put out there, like it's this, to me, it's the same as like, no, nobody wants teenagers drinking in their basement,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want kids, bullying or any of that. And then it's at your house, it's coming from I mean, these are things that happen that we do have to think about, like not fun conversations, but the, they happen. And when
Yeah.
those when those things do happen, I see that too as a counselor. I have students that will bring me their phone and be like, look at what was sent to me, or look at this group, like what they did, like, and that's, that happens under someone's roof.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool that they come to you and they give that to you and trust you with that, right? Like it's so cool that you have that relationship and trust with the students that they can take a hurt or a pain and share it with you, and you can help them navigate that and kind of figure out what do I do with these feelings that are icky, or how do I handle this. I mean that's really really important.
Yeah, it's the greatest privilege. It really is. And parents can have that too if we don't, if we aren't so quick to like react. I mean, really, like being able to have that relationship with your kid of having, being able to kind of stop if there's a situation and they're panicked and upset, but like really being able to like stop and say, okay, what what do you want out of this conversation? Are you needing me to listen? Are you wanting action items? Or, do we need to go like window shop or go get ice cream or something? You know what I mean? I think that that privilege really is available, to all parents. Because adolescents, they fear the reaction.
Mm-hmm.
They do. So, but yeah, no, it's a great privilege. I love my job. I don't see myself ever not doing it.
Well,
So,
it's good. They're lucky to have you. We're lucky to have you. And I think everything you shared is such a great reminder to go in curious. I think that's the biggest takeaway I have is go in curious and be open. And I think as a parent, sometimes I go in like with an intensity and a plan and and that
hmm,
doesn't necessarily have create an environment for open dialogue or all the time, right? But I
yeah,
think what you're saying is a really good reminder for parents that we want to be that soft place for them to land when they need it. And thank you for creating that space for our kids. Thank you for
oh
being
yeah,
that person for them when maybe we parents aren't creating an environment or we're not that person for them at all times. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing what you do. Honestly, it means a
thank you.
lot to 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 us, to parents, and to our community. So thank you for doing what you do, Kat.
Well, thank you for the kind words. It's like I said, it's the greatest privilege to be able to share space like that with any person.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
And the teenage preteen years are hard, so it's great that they have somebody like you in their corner helping them. Um, Well, I really appreciate you being on today and joining me for Screen Guardians podcast. Is there any other things that you would like to share or before we kind of sign off for the day?
Um, no, I think that's I think that's it. Yeah. yeah, I think I got most of it across, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, from
Yeah.
you definitely answered all of my questions. This is probably going to be an ongoing dialogue, and things will develop as kids continue to age, technology changes. But we appreciate you being such a resource of and a place of knowledge and care for kids. And I think parents and caregivers can learn a lot from listening to what you shared with us today. And again, educating our community around this topic of digital health and wellness and encouraging safety to preserve and protect childhood is really significant. And you said it, like the number one thing that you would recommend for parents is basically to delay and or
Hmm.
know that when you introduce technology, you're introducing greater responsibility and a greater level of accountability for parents to be involved and aware of what's going on with the kid.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, Katie, I did just remember I would be
Sure.
remiss to say,
Yeah.
um, my biggest thing, and this is from a couple situations that I saw in the hospital inpatient,
Mhm.
was to review, have it be like whether it's biweekly, monthly, the followers and who people are friends with on Instagram and Snapchat is huge. Like if the kid cannot say, oh, first and last name, they're in this class. Like if they don't have those kinds of details, they've got to go off the list. Um, that's a really, especially with Snapchat, that's just a really sneaky way for, predators, that I've seen um, firsthand, which, I'm sure in your other conversation you've, spoken about that. But just for parents to, you know, maybe that's part of getting a certain app
Hmm.
is okay, but I get full access to the followers. And if you can't tell me first, last name, how you know this person, we're getting rid of them.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, so yeah, that's the one thing that I will add.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we have said something similar. So Kevin, my co-host, has said that if you don't know them in real life, they have no business being one of your friends on social media. So if you don't know them in real life, not my friend's cousin's brother, like no, if you
Right.
don't know them in real life, then they're not a friend that we need to have on any platform. So yeah, thank you for reinforcing that. And I think it's probably a great reminder. And again, to protect our kids. So
And added to the list of responsibilities.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Add that to your to-do
you
list,
know,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
It's really
yeah.
important though. It's really, really important.
It's huge. It's
Yeah.
huge. So, okay,
Well,
that's all I have.
yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for your time, Kat. And thank you for joining us. And, if there's any questions, anybody has any questions for Kat or would like to reach out, we will put a way for you to connect or share questions with us and we can pass on to her. But thank you for joining us today. And until next time, thanks for listening to Screen Guardians.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you,
Thank you,
Katie.
Kat.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.